Hello and thank you for coming back to this episode of Simple Silicon. I'm your host, Kirito Tatsuma. Now, no matter what, you can always agree that whether you're AMD or Intel, the CPU is probably a big consideration depending on your use case. If you're video editing, or if you're gaming and streaming, it's probably or just a heavy multitasker. It can make a big difference in your experience. Take this Pentium right here. It's dual-core G4400, and it's great if you're doing some web surfing, internet viewing, watching movies and stuff. But the moment you try to game or multitask or stream, it kind of breaks down pretty quick. And so what we have here is a representation of something you might buy at the big box store, and you take it home and you've been using it, and then you're like, I would really like to upgrade my gaming performance. So you go out, you spend some money, and you put a high-end GPU in this case it's a 1080 Ti, and you're like, wow, it's kind of better, but it also is not as good as my performance numbers. And we're going to run some tests and compare what happens if you upgrade from the Pentium G44 to a Core i5. This one is the i5 7600. This is on an Z270, not X299, Z270. And we got 8 gigs of RAM, 1080 Ti obviously, and yes, the Pentium G44. So right now we got Heaven running in the background, and we're actually hitting 70, 60, 71, 70. So we're doing alright if you only need to do a 60 frame rate a second experience, but as we all know, like this one's reaching 100, but we're getting some dips into the 60s. So we're going to see if swapping out to the i5 is going to be better for that. But before we do that, let's run some more benchmarks. Alright, so if we can look right away, we're definitely getting frame rates about 56. So less than stellar for a 1080 Ti. And this is really due because the CPU just can't keep up with the GPU in delivering the amount of frames. So we'll see how the score increases when we put in the i5 here. Okay, so we're doing the CPU test right now, and we can definitely see we're getting like 27, 23. So definitely not the most powerful. Oh, it's going down to 10. So we're going down to 10 frames a second for this one. So we can definitely see, especially for the 1080 Ti, this is not the kind of performance that you'd be expecting. So we're definitely going to have to check it out. Okay, so it looks like with this we got a score of 5273. Now that isn't what I would expect to see, particularly when we suffer from the CPU test. Okay, so we're going to run a GTA benchmark just to go over quick. We're running at 1440. VSync is off. Advanced graphics, shadows and everything. We're just going to go through and run the benchmark. Okay, so right away we can see we're doing 48, 50. We're doing kind of low in our frame rate. So not really the best experience. I mean, high 50s, sure, but it looks like it's kind of going up and down with what we're seeing. Again, 50, 58, 57, so we're pretty close to 60. You could probably get by, but you can see there's a lot of chopping in this video. Yeah, I mean, we're loading, but the frame times have got to be pretty long. I'm seeing a lot of choppiness. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take out the Pentium that's in here. I'm going to put in this i5 just so you reference that again. It's the i5 7600. What I'll be doing is taking the stock fan off of what's in there, and I'll put the an actual NHL965. So that should keep it nice and cool without going too overkill. So let's do that right now. One of the reasons why I did this, obviously to make the video, but um, what I wanted to do was have a separate streaming rig, not to play games. The 1080 Ti is only in there because it's slated to be used somewhere else in the future. Basically, what I would think that most people would have with a system with an i5 like this on the Z270, or not Z, yeah, Z270, on 8 gigs of RAM is probably like a 1060, maybe a 1070. That's what I think they're talking about. So the 1080 Ti is just there to amplify any bottleneck. And one of the things that may have been suggested was to turn down the graphical settings, but if you turn it down, then that's demanding even more of the CPU. So, and this is at 1440p, so you might see actually a little bit less. I know that other YouTubers have done the same test at 1080p, as that's more practical. But I wanted to be able to, yes, okay, so we do know that, but what is it like at a higher performance? Are the higher demands of the GPU in such a fashion that we don't need, that you might be able to get away with it? But already I see there's a lot less tearing and stuff in the video. At least stuttering from lack of performance. Obviously it looks like it's running higher than 60 panel. So I'm getting some of that tearing, which is good because it means it's running over 60 frames a second. Yeah, sorry, the demo isn't skippable. So do I think it's a good upgrade before the results come in? Well, if you're just going to video game, then you might want to go with the 7400, which is $40 less at the time of purchasing. I want to be streaming with this, not game and stream, just through my capture card stream. And funny enough, I game on my FX 8350 paired with the 980 Ti. But at 1440p, that is good enough. I hit the 60 frames a second on this panel, and it can do DirectX 12 Gen 1 just fine. So if I'm hitting 60, obviously I want to upgrade, and I'm saving to upgrade for that. But I think this is a great example of a pre-built. What if it does come with, what if it was like a $300 pre-built, just the Pentium, no graphics card? Then I might be asking myself, what can I do with this system? I already have all my files, my preferences saved. What can I do? Well, if it did, upgrade to an i5, at maybe an i3 at the minimum, a high-end i3, that type of threaded. But try the i5, the 7400. It's about, I don't know, like $180. Aim maybe for 1050 Ti. So we're looking at the worst of it, maybe a $400 to $500 upgrade. At the better end, with some deals, maybe only $300. If you are in a position, so we're getting 52 frames a second. It does look a lot more stable. I'll have to compare. I forgot what I was getting. I think I was actually getting 10 frames a second. Okay, but back to this. I could see that if you didn't have the GPU and you had the Pentium in there, and this was a pre-built, if you got at least a minimum wage job, and you didn't have to, and you could save $300, get an i5, get a 1050. At the extreme end, get a 1030. Aim for the 1050, but if you can't, get the 1030. And you should see a much bigger boost. The 2 extra cores are great in a world that's becoming more multitasked. With your multi-thread programming. As you can see, the 2 cores, it was the same frequency, similar, within the, like, I think, 0.1 or 2 hertz there. But already, I'm getting a better experience looking at this. We're looking at, we're hitting 60. I mean, we're between, I think I saw 48 at the low, 60 at the high. And quite frankly, that's playable. That's playable frame rates right there. We'll have to see in a moment when the CPU test comes up next. But yeah, like this is looking great. I mean, obviously the games are going to be more optimized for the lower stuff. You could turn down some settings. So let's see what the CPU test does. Okay, wow, that's a lot different. So already we're at 43, 45 frames a second. Oh, we just dipped to 23. We were at 10 frames a second, 5 to 10 frames a second before this. 13 frames, 12 frames. Okay, we'll see what the final result is. This is already higher. This is 7,241. So let's do some Grand Theft Auto. Let's load that up in the benchmark. Okay, so right away we can see a lot better score, high 80s, 90s. And I'm not seeing any tearing, any bad pop in. Look at this, 80, 90, 100 frames a second. So yeah, the extra 2 cores of the i5 definitely make a huge difference while gaming here. Yeah, 120, 100. Yeah, that's definitely looking a lot better than it was. So, what it comes down to is those 2 cores just aren't enough to cut it anymore for any type of gaming. I believe there's a 6 core out there for this platform, maybe. But yeah, I mean, you could go with an i7 and get even probably a little bit more results. Probably 20% at most, I would say. I think the biggest jump is definitely from a dual-core Pentium, or even a dual-core i3, than to this i5 here. And we didn't change the GPU. We just changed out the CPU. And we're seeing absolutely amazing performance gains. So, or even if you're coming from an Athlon system, an old school Athlon, or an FX, maybe even a really old, Lynn Lake Intel CPU, you're definitely going to see performance gains going to the newer architecture. Now that Pentium is Skylake and this is Kaby Lake S, but as we can see, you probably, even if you went with a Skylake platform, you still would have gotten very playable results. I mean, even if you were at Haswell and Broadwell, even if you had an i7 or an i5 from back then, you probably would, you wouldn't be too far behind the curve. Sandy Bridge is getting a bit older. Anything before Sandy Bridge or before, I would say it's worth upgrading. Yeah, so conclusion time, is upgrading, is a dual core worth it today? Probably not. I mean, unless all you're doing is playing videos, Facebook, YouTube, looking at the, news articles or whatever, then that's fine for you. You won't even need a GPU for that. But doing anything more like playing video games, using it as a streaming device, you're going to want to consider going to quad core. If you're on the Ryzen platform, I mean, I don't know if there's any dual core Ryzen AMD recently. I don't think that they even have that. But just to show you how much a CPU upgrade like this can help in something like that scenario. You have a pre-built, it's only 2 cores. You know, you go out, you get your GPU, and you're not seeing the performance that you want to see. So definitely going and getting a 4-core CPU to improve the situation. And if you're getting a pre-built, consider changing out that power supply too, because power supplies like that are not the best and might not be enough power to supply that, especially if you're going like 1060 or higher NVIDIA, or like in our what's on the AMD side right now, AMD 64 and AMD 52. I forget what that's called. Vega. Or even like an RX, whatever, 9080 or whatever. Going to anything like that, definitely consider, upgrading that PSU that comes in a pre-built. Like I said, we're running 8 gigs of RAM here. That was $100 for some Crucial. I mean, it's kind of like really what you want to do with it. Like I said, i5 minimum, maybe an i3, but I've seen other reviewers test that and it really didn't work. So that's pretty much the conclusion of this video. Those 4 cores are definitely making a huge difference here. And mind you, we did the 1080 Ti for both tests. So we definitely wanted to exacerbate any of the bottlenecks that were happening with that CPU. That's why it was in there. So like this video if you like it, dislike if you want to do that, get subscribed, comment down below, do all that jazz, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. I'm Kirito Tazuma, so yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.